Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the Vampire Diaries, Grimm, Sleepy Hollow, as well as Emerald City. Like always, if I'm talking about something you don't want to listen to, you can always look in the description below. I include the time of when I start talking about each of the respective shows I'm talking about. For example, if you don't want to hear what I have to say about the Vampire Diaries, you can skip to what I have to say about Grimm or Sleepy Hollow or Emerald City. But first thing we're going to talk about is this week's episode of the Vampire Diaries. So basically, Damon is called back to Mystic Falls by Sybil because she wants the ball that he still has on him. But the interesting thing is, what I love most about it is Sybil tries to get inside of his head, but she realizes she can't because he even goes inside of her head. She's like, I don't know why so your attitude up here telling me no and stuff. But she's like, we'll fix that. Gets inside of his head, takes over one of his memories. And she's like, I don't know what glitches up with you, but you need to get in line. He's like, you know what? You're right. Grabs her face and slams her head against the mirror. And she snaps back. She's like, how did you do that? He's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I do hope it hurt. So because of his situation with Elena, it is messing with his head, and it's that humanity switch is flipping up and down. But his memories of Elena are so strong that it's slowly but surely overriding whatever control Sybil had on him. It's something that Stefan is up saying, that he's saying she made a mistake by making him come back here, because specifically this pageant that they're at here in Mystic Falls that Caroline's running and everything, it's the place where he first fell in love with Elena, so it triggered everything. This was kind of the start of his feelings for her, even though he can't remember loving her. It's still there. There's residuals of it still inside of him. The best way Stefan describes it as because the thing is, Sybil underestimated Elena. That was her biggest fault. And that's something that anyone can tell you. It's how much she means to Damon, and just how much of an impact, not just on Damon, but how she's had a huge impact on everyone's life. So she's not something that easy to kind of wipe out of people's memories. Because she even does it later on. She basically starts, her and Stefan work together because it's trying to beat Damon down and be like, oh, the fact is, you don't realize what you're doing. It's you can be fine and then break free of my control. But you know what that means? Your humanity's going to flip back on. And you know what that means when your humanity comes back? That means all of it's going to be hitting you. Everything you've ever done, killing Tyler, kidnapping Caroline's children, or Caroline and Alaric's children. The fact is, making the deal with Cade, selling your own brother's soul, all the people you've killed, it's all of that's going to hit you at once, and that guilt's going to eat you alive. It's even alluding to it's oh, will Lena actually forgive you? But for Damon, he plays along, but at first, then he's you know what, the thing is, you still, even though you've been inside my head, you still can't comprehend and understand is Elena's capacity for forgiveness. It's kind of just her own, is being all her own, and just how kind-hearted and understanding she is, and how big her heart is. And when it comes to people, it's no matter what I've done, he knows on some level he still has Elena, that it won't be easy what he's done, but Sybil kind of got in her head that she thought she could erase Elena, but Elena's too important to everyone to be erased like nothing like that. And so he breaks free of her. But Stefan is completely disappointed in Damon. It's I finally became the person I'm supposed to be. It's this is the sweet deal. Killing people for Cade, being full-blown Ripper with no, not holding back, no more remorse and everything. And it's hey, I finally become the person I needed to be. It's we could have finally been brothers, because for always, Damon and Stefan, very rarely, there are occasions when they are on the same page, but they're always at odds, because Stefan's, not killing people, but Damon is. When Stefan is killing people, it's always going a little too far. But he was thinking at this point in time, doing what they're doing, that him and his brother is hey, finally, one point in our life, I got my humanity switch flipped off. I'm going on Ripper. You've got your humanity switch flipped off, and hey, we can go on a killing spree, essentially. And it's now he's getting his humanity back, and it's you're screwing everything up. He's so you know what? I'm gonna go on my own, because I don't need you to be there holding me back. And Damon's are you kidding me? You mean the fact is I'm here trying to keep you together, keep this whole train going, because the fact is you're not doing your job properly anyway. Yeah, you're having fun and enjoying killing people and everything, but it's we've got a job to do. I'm still doing the job we were hired to do. I'm here keeping you in line to keep you from going onto the Ripper train, but it's apparently that's not helping. And he's yeah, I don't need that anymore, and proceeds to stab him. Then there's whole situation with the whole pageant situation, he ended up turning all 6 of the finalists, snaps one of their necks, and ends up like, because he ended up giving them all some of his blood, and it's basically saying like, oh, Caroline, we're in this together, right? So you either have 2 choices: you go along with everything I'm doing, and let basically all the blood that's, let me continue doing what I'm doing, and that basically makes you an accomplice to it. That means every bit of blood I spill is blood on your hands. So even the people he's killed so far, yeah, it's on her hands too. Or he's like, you could just kind of call this whole stupid wedding thing off. And she proceeds to stab him and end up killing him. And I was like, I'm surprised that's her. And then he starts decaying, like, I forgot what the word is they use for it, like when they start turning pale like that. And then I was like, oh, right, they can't die. I completely forgot about that. They can't die anymore because they've gained immortality from Cade. Caroline's really had a tough job this episode, like, because Caroline's really kind of stepped up to become the one that kind of keeps everything together. She's trying to help Damon remember, Elena. It's like, what the hell did Sybil do to you? She really messed you up. It's like the whole point of giving him the necklace was to kind of help push this along. And I thought that was I figured that was how this was going to go. It's going to be like Damon gets his humanity back first, and then he helps the others try and help get Stefan back and try to figure this whole thing out. Because she's telling Damon to hold on to that little bit of love he has for Elena. Like, the fact is, once again, underestimating it. Sybil definitely underestimates it. It's being like that. His love for Elena is like, the fact is that she brings out the good in him. And also, Stefan, kind of think about it, Stefan said that very messed up thing. It's like, if it wasn't for the fact, because if he wasn't in the situation he was back then, the only reason why Elena even gave him the time of the day was because Stefan wasn't there. It's like, while they were still dating, but he was there to dance with her. And we saw her go down the stairs. That was the moment he first fell in love with her. And it's like, if I was there, you wouldn't have a chance, essentially kind of messing with Damon's head. Making it seem like, oh yeah, you stole my girl from me, which, the thing is, Stefan's always been happy for him and Elena because, like, I'm sure there's a part of him, it did break his heart and it sucked because he really loved Elena. He loved her first. But at the same time, it's like, well, to be fair, she made him better. So there was a part of him that's happy about it. But I'm sure, like, him talking now, there's a part of him that always hid that back. The side of him that's a little more tactful than his Ripper self. Now that he's his Ripper self, he kind of says what he wants. So he's probably always felt like that and thought like that, but he never said anything because there's also that side of him that's like, but the thing is, Elena brings out the good in my brother. So at the end of the day, I can't fault her for that. And, he ended up finding Caroline at the end of it all. So, but dealing with that and also trying to help the Stefan, she's like, okay, you know what? Fine, you're right. I'm part of this whole thing. She's like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna be, if all the people you killed, I'm gonna have to be, I'm part of that too. But let's set some ground rules. It is only evil people. You don't go around trying to make bad people. But sadly, Stefan isn't down for that. He's like, saying basically, he's like, we made that deal, right? About a year. It's like, no, this will go on as long as I want it to. I don't have any plans. Just like Kate said, I don't have any plans to go back. He said Stefan wouldn't want to get started. And for Caroline, she's just kind of given up to a certain extent of being like, you know what? Obviously, you're up here having so much fun, but eventually you're going to wake up one day and forget that you realize that you've forgotten what it means to be happy. Not having fun, being happy. And she's like, so till then, just don't come near me, and throws the ring at him. And it seems like she's also, it's kind of an interesting situation with the girl that got changed too, because it's like, at first she's like, become a vampire, drink people's blood, kill them. I don't want to do that. No. I don't want to do that. Let me just die. You can kill me. But Caroline's like, it's okay. I know how scared you are. It's like, because Caroline was there, like, out of second to last person in the group to get turned into a vampire, because the last one was, because Elena got turned after her. But it's like, she's like, I know what you going through. The fact is, look at me. But I was scared too, but it's like, you're like, just because you became a vampire doesn't, because you die, death isn't the end. It could be seen as a new beginning, because as a vampire, I went to college, I got an anchor job, she became a mom. That's kind of its own thing. You can't really bring that up in front of her, because it's like, she can never be a mom, because, Caroline's situation is very special, so can't really bring that up. But still, she lived a life, and she's still living a life, so it's like, there's still good to it. It won't be easy, but it is something that she can do. And so it's kind of interesting because she's being Stefan for someone else, because Stefan was the one that kind of really helped her transition into being a vampire. He's the one, that's kind of what sparked some of like Caroline's feelings for him, is because she saw that side of him. Like she always saw the good in Stefan, but it was also like them being close together, him being kind of a mentor to her. You know, I'm sure around that time she started developing feelings for him and stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because this is her first time actually being a mentor to another vampire. So it kind of coincides with Bonnie's storyline too, because her and Enzo, like Enzo gave her a necklace with his blood in it. It's like, oh yeah, it's kind of a sweet yet weird gesture. I know, but she accepted it because basically it's like, oh, is it supposed to be kind of a representation of you ever possibly becoming a vampire? Because even Caroline was taken back by it. She's like, have you thought about becoming a vampire? She's like, the old Bonnie I know would never do that. And kind of coinciding with like the conversation, it's like, because it's such a hard thing. That's one reason why Bonnie, she's like, a year ago, I would have told you, hell no, I'd never become a vampire. Not because of just being the whole witch thing, but it's because she saw how literally everyone around her, Damon, Stefan, Caroline, Elena, saw all of them struggling to deal with the life of a vampire, like trying not to kill people, the need for blood. It's like that struggle on a daily basis. It's like, yeah, Caroline seems like she got it in a swing, but it's like, as you can see, like, especially, but you know, Caroline hasn't been a vampire for nearly as long as Stefan or Damon has. And it's like, that's a long life to live, to have to deal with the struggle of trying not to be a monster, you know? So that's a lot to handle. So she never wanted to do that herself, but now the question is, like, maybe she wants to, because the fact is that, you know, Enzo's there and she's like, she found someone she's madly in love with. She'd never thought about, oh, spending the rest, what forever would meant to be with someone, you know? She never really thought of it, never took it literally, but now she wants her forever to be with him, and he wants the same of her. There was like, it's that sweet moment, because literally I was scared at any moment. I was like, all right, it's like they're setting something up just to go wrong in their relationship. Like one of them is going to die. It's like they're literally setting it up. It's like they're setting it up, setting up, just so it hits you that much harder when one of them dies. Because it comes up the whole conversation. Because like, it's like, okay, we got to go back. Okay, we got all the party guests out here. We got to go back and help with the whole Stefan and Sybil situation. And Enzo's like, no, you're not going. She's like, why are you used to let me go into danger anyway. You know I can handle myself. He's like, yeah, but now I'm like, that was when you had my blood around your neck. That way, even if I'm not around, you can protect yourself. Then in case she gets super hurt, she can drink his blood and heal. Or, you know, maybe before she dies or something, you know. Because it scares him, because he can't imagine his life without her anymore. It's like, as a human, she will eventually die. But that's another reason why Bonnie feels she can't become a vampire. Because she doesn't know, like, the spell that's in place at keeping Elena asleep for as long as Bonnie's alive, she doesn't want to do that to her best friend. It's like she's going to deprive her best friend of ever having a life if she becomes a vampire, because, you know, there's no magical loopholes around that. It's like if she does it, she might screw it up so that Elena can never wake up. And, you know, she's not going to do, because it's not only her she would be affecting. She'd be affecting everyone that Elena cares about, everyone that still be around waiting for her. Someone like Damon and Stefan and Caroline, they'd still be waiting for her. And it's like she can't deprive them of Elena too. Like she owes it to her best friend to let her live, no matter how much she would want to spend forever with Enzo. But then she's like, 60 or 7 years, that's pretty good. And then Enzo's just like, you know, he didn't know what it meant, you know, wanting to spend forever with someone until he really met Bonnie. And it's just like, you know, that 60 or 70 is going to have to be there forever. But then Bonnie's like, well, what if we can have a forever, not just your forever, but our forever? And she's like, the cure. And I'm like, wait, what's up with that? I mean, the last person to have the cure was Elena, because the only reason why the cure was still around was because of that whole, like, the Gemini coven situation where, what's his face? The one who put the curse on them in the first place. I can't think of his name now. He's literally Mon. It's the same actor who plays Mon-El on Supergirl, because I brought it up before, but I forgot his name now. But Kai, that's it. The same place. They ended up finding a cure there. So not unless she plans on. I mean, because it's like, how would she do that anyway? Because it's like she doesn't have magic anymore. So it's like, how would that all, you know, work out? Like she's saying, like, get the cure, but it's like, how would you get the cure? Like, I don't know, because basically turning him human would kind of fix the problem. It's like that way they can grow old together and everything. I mean, because like you don't know where everyone's story is going to end up at the end of this. Maybe we get Enzo being human. Does that mean that what happens when Elena wakes up? Will Damon turn her back into a vampire? Or, well, I forgot, because I can't remember. Like, once it's in your system, you can't never go back to being a vampire ever again, can you? I don't remember. I don't know. I don't remember if that's come up yet. Like, if you take the cure, you can no longer ever become a vampire again. Maybe, I don't remember. Then there's the side of things with Dorian and Sybil. Dorian wants to get his revenge because Sybil initially is like coming like, no, not Sybil, Celine. She comes to Caroline and Bonnie is like, hey, help me out, because like basically, as I figure, this weapon can kill a siren. It's like she basically wants to kill her sister because, you know, she's trying to do the whole Stefan thing and kind of make up for all the bad things that she's ever done, trying to do some good in her life. So it's like the only thing good she can do is kill Sybil, because it's like she's the one that made this mistake, because she made Sybil into a siren. Like this whole Cade situation, she kind of forced this upon Sybil, and all the pain that's ever Sybil's created, all the lives that she's taken, all the lives she's ruined, it's on Celine too. So it's like with this, she can kill Sybil. Obviously, she talks to Dorian later on in the episode, but there's that conversation she had with Dorian. He's like, yeah, I'm here for Georgia. I'm doing this for Georgia. And then Celine was kind of like, Georgie? And he hits it, and he was about to hit again. She's like, oh, Georgie. Yeah, Georgie. Yeah, Georgie. It's like, you forgot who she was. The difference between her and Stefan is the fact is that Stefan carries his victims with him. He never forgets. That's always been the thing. He tortures himself by remembering the face and the name of everyone he's ever killed. It seems like she hasn't gotten to that point yet, because it's only now that Celine has really started regretting what she's done. I think more so than anything, it's the whole Rick situation, because I think legitimately she started falling for Rick and seeing how much she hurt him. And the fact is that she was about to do the same thing to two other girls that was kind of done to them, just like because she wanted to be free. Like all this started because she wanted her sister to be like her. Like she wanted to take that, you know, force his life upon her sister. So. But then Doria's kind of talking to Matt later on when he finally gets the bell and everything. It's like, yo, you gotta listen to what she says. And then it clicks. I've already said it before. I thought that was Sybil's plan. Maybe it is, but now it seems like it might be Celine's plan to kill Cade. It's like, let's not forget, he is technically a siren. All it takes to be a siren is to have that power to be able to get inside people's heads like that, and he has it. So technically he's a siren, so it can, obviously, it works on them as sirens, so obviously it's going to work on Cade, who has a similar power, so. Especially because the bell, like, the tuning fork alone is enough to hurt them, but it would never hurt someone as powerful as Cade. That's why you need the entire bell. That way the power is magnified. So obviously that's got to be the plan that Celine's bringing to both Matt and Dorian. An interesting fact we also found out too is that only someone from the Maxwell family, that includes Matt and his dad, are the only ones who can ring that bell. I mean, anyone else could probably ring it, but it won't work unless it's in someone of the Maxwell family's hands that it really activates. So. Another thing that happened is the fact is that Damon is kind of back in control and everything. And then he kind of locks Sybil up and he kind of tears her apart. He's like, you know what? I come to realize, he's like, because Sybil is basically like, I've been around for a long time. I've been tortured. It's like nothing you can do will really affect me. I've kind of been through and seen it all. And he's like, oh, don't worry. I've kind of been inside of your head just like you've been inside of mine. So I know just how to attack you. And it's like, you know what I've noticed about you is that over the past 2,000 years that you've been alive, you have nothing. And you know why? Because you are nothing. And it's just like, damn. I was like, ooh, that's a kind of a crushing blow. I actually wasn't halfway expecting her to cry like that. I thought she was just going to like, kind of like be smirking and then it dies away. I wasn't expecting her to actually tear up, but maybe that was more so to draw him in. But either way, it's still true, because like, not trying to, well, there's part of me that kind of feels bad for her because she was kind of forced into this whole situation from being different, but that doesn't justify all the things that she's ever done, because he's also bringing up the fact is I always don't know what you look like originally. Like, oh, this form you're got now, that's not what you really look like. You're just a pile of mush, blood. That's all there really is to you. The creepy hand that we've always kept seeing, like, you know, before she got her body back and everything. Because it's like for Sybil, I keep doing that. For Sybil, she's always had to force people to love her. The people always be there for her and have, like, she's never really truly loved someone. She's always been alone. She's always had to force other people to be around her, to care for her. So she's just kind of empty on the inside. But the kind of, as retribution, she basically grabs onto him and gives him his humanity back. And it's like, yeah, and we see Damon lying there with his humanity hitting him hard. So, I mean, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out because it's like he was already teetering there, but now he's like full blown humanity back. Has to live with everything he's done, especially the killing Tyler thing. I was hoping on everything that was faked, but it's like nope. And it's like he has to live with the fact is, and it's like he's probably going to come to the others too, asking for forgiveness. And it's like I don't know. Bonnie will probably be slightly okay. Like she'll be somewhat welcoming him back slightly, possibly. And because the biggest problem Bonnie always had with Damon was the fact is that he gave up. That's what she blames him the most about is because he gave up while Enzo kept fighting afterwards. And she almost lost Enzo because Damon gave up too. And it just, so, I don't know. Caroline might be more welcoming, but at the same time, she might be pissed too. Because they all obviously pissed about the Tyler situation. Caroline's probably going to be pissed because no matter, even if he got his humanity back, it doesn't change the fact is that Stefan's situation is the way it is now is because of Damon. But in the long scheme of things, it's like this all happened because Damon was trying to do the right thing, got caught up by the side. It's like he not, the whole armory situation. So, but I'm very interested to see how this all plays out. Where this all takes us next episode will especially because Matt out of anybody else, probably Alaric won't ever forgive him neither because it's like you kidnapped my children. Matt is like you killed my best friend. It's like screw you. It's like I already kind of hated you guys already, and now on top of this, it's like I already have plenty enough reason to hate your brother because of the whole Penny situation. Now I hate you also because of all the bad stuff you done. Let's not forget the fact is you killed my sister Vicky. Plus on top of this, the whole Tyler situation too. Just he's had enough, I'm sure. So. It makes you wonder, will there, a constant question that's come up, will there ever be, can Damon make up for it all? And I guess we'll kind of have to wait and see how it all plays out. And now moving on to this week's episode of Grimm. A lot of stuff went down in this episode, just overall very good episode. Just like this episode legitimately to me was so much fun. So much stuff went down. First you had the whole situation with Nick turning into Renard. Can I first point out something? I was literally thinking in the episode, it's like this is the 4th season in a row that spell has come up. It has come up once every season subsequently since season 3. In season 3, Adeline used it to become Juliet to steal Nick's powers. In season 4, Juliet turned into Adeline to get Nick his Grimm powers back. In season 5, Juliet turned into Renard to kind of get information about the whole situation, figure out what side he was on, and ended up sleeping with Rachel. And now in season 6, we have Nick turning into Renard. So that was it was so good. And an interesting thing too is because how it all played out, because being Renard, him being a Grimm and this transforming into it ended up he ended up voguing. It's kind of interesting, because that was kind of a thing I didn't know really. I think it only happened because of him being a Grimm. He ended up becoming that person. Because, I don't know. It never came. Maybe that kind of played into why Juliet Eve became a hexen beast, was because that's what Adeline was. And once, Eve turned into Adeline, even when she reverted back, there's that piece of Adeline left inside of her. Does beg the question, when all is said and done, is there a little bit of Sean left inside of Nick too? Because Nick is something I keep forgetting. The fact is, Nick has gotten souped up over the season because of that dude at the end of season 2 trying to control him, but it not working. Him being a Grimm, it didn't work, so he ended up going a little berserk. So, that ended up helping enhance his, for one, you saw it in this episode. It's Nick has super good hearing now because of just it affected his body. I guess it mixed with his Grimm blood and enhanced him. I don't know. I feel the only other Grimms we've ever really met are, wasn't that dude's name Jake, the one whose father was a Grimm, but he didn't believe his dad about it till he met Nick in Trouble. And then obviously Nick's Nick's mom. I don't know where my brain is. They're kind of the only Grimms we've ever really gotten to meet over the course of the series. So it seems like that's something those things coming up are just kind of, I guess you could argue him as a Grimm has mutated. So maybe something will come out of him being this whole spell, what it did to Sean. I love Monroe when he was over at Adeline's place and being okay, it's which tie should I get, the red or the blue? I think the blue looks nice, but I don't know. Nick's doesn't really get much of a tie guy. And Adeline's it doesn't matter. Just get it and go. And then also having to cover the fact is that Monroe was in the closet, hiding in the closet. He's like, really? No, I don't think this is a good idea. Closes the closet. And then she's having to buy time, because like Nick wants to pretend to be Renard to kind of change everything. And her way of keeping him there is like, we have so much to talk about. We have to talk about Diana going to school. We can't send her to public school. We can't send her to private school. Cause it's like, if she goes to school and stuff, what if she has an argument with a friend or whatever? And it's like, with a student or whatever, and then kind of uses the power. Or what if there's something where a teacher puts her in timeout and then she kind of puts them in permanent timeout, which are valid concerns that have to be brought up. Cause she basically hasn't gone to school this entire time. At least not that we know of. I mean, we don't really know what her situation was like when she was with the Royals or when she was with the Resistance, whatever the case may be. Because we don't really know what her situation was like when she was with the Resistance, being held by protected by them, And then she just kept making up excuses, and Sean's like, okay, fine, I got a little time, tell me what's on your mind. She's like, I've got so much on my mind, like, so much. It's just like the awkwardness of just having to buy time. And then that oh, there's so much good stuff. Okay, trailing back, also the whole situation with when Nick was about to suck it up, like inhale from the hat, and Rosalie's like, whoa. How do we know this is really going to work? You're a Grimm. This might have adverse effects. We don't have time to check it out, but I have to do it again. Eve says, wait. What now? You're going to have to strip. What? You're going to have to strip. Renard's bigger than you. Your clothes are going to be a little tight. And then everyone else is kind of looking away. Even Eve's looking away. But then Rosalie and Monroe stay facing the other way after Nick stripped and everything. But Eve kind of looks at him. It's like, it's no big deal. She's kind of seen Nick naked anyway. So it's slightly okay, I guess. Especially because she's turning a little bit back into Juliet. Especially because that conversation came up earlier, playing into that love triangle situation. She's like, you love Adeline. He's like, why are you asking me that? She's like, I'm not asking you. I feel it. And it's like, a little bit of Juliet coming back, kind of probably a little heartbroken about the whole situation. I'm surprised the fact is they mentioned his mom earlier in the episode, bringing up the comparison like, oh, Diana's like way more powerful than anyone gives her credit for. Even then Renard knows because of what she was able to see. Like no one else could see that. Even being as powerful as Eve is, the only reason why she was able to see it was because of her experience in that other world. But Diana doesn't have that case. She just uses her powers and she saw it. But getting back to the point I was about to make before was I love, as Renard, him up there making that statement being like, I'm going to have to back down out the being mayor. I got to give props to Nick Burkhart. He was doing his job. This whole thing, sorry to confuse you, but it was undercover work, and he did a fantastic job. We should really be giving our thanks to Nick. I'm like, shut up. And kind of trailing back to it. I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I also love the fact is that when they were telling him how to be more like Sean, they're like, kind of, act more like, basically act a little more douchey. Just like, yeah, act like you own the place. Like, act like you became mayor. And then Eve adds in, act like you want Nick dead. And he just puts on the face like, oh yeah, you got it now. That's good. And even when it's like, oh, Hank's coming, they're like, oh, Hank, come over here. And he's like, what did I tell you? I thought I said I wanted your papers. Hank got super pissed. I already gave you my damn papers. And then like, oh, good job. He's like, wait, is that Nick? It's like, that's Nick. And then so Wu was super excited too. He's like, oh, wait, this is Nick, right? He's like, yeah, that's Nick. I was like, man, you did such a good job and everything. And then basically telling all the reporters is like, man, what can you say about this whole undercover thing? He's like, well, all I can say is we have Nick Burkhart the thing, but not just him, also his partner, Hank, as well as, Wu giving him credit too. Like, gotta look out for his boys, right? I love it, kind of helping with the whole getting them reinstated type of thing, because Sean kind of officially kicked him out. And I love Wu's reaction. Wu was like, ooh, Wu was about to get him, and he was transforming, but Hank had to calm him down. Favorite lines from Wu this episode being like, we should have killed Sean when we had the chance. And then Hank is like, we never actually had a chance to kill him. And literally a minute later, we should have killed Renard when we didn't have the chance. And especially when they're like, okay, buy us a little time in case Renard comes. And he's like, oh, gladly. I thought what was going to happen is I was hoping the parking lot would be clear so that Wu could go transforming and then fight Renard. That's what I thought was going to go down to. But they basically put him in a situation where, like, if he tries to redact it a little bit later on in front of reporters, but he can't because now he's looking like an imbecile. It's like, oh, did you change your tie too? And he's stuck in a rock and a hard place because he can't really explain what just happened. It's like, that wasn't me. I was like, then who was it? And it's just like, eh. And basically Nick, is stuck looking like Renard, unfortunately, because of being a Grimm and everything. So once again, kind of the side effects. the Vesson side of things doesn't mix well with the Grimm side of things, which does bring up the question, what's Kelly going to be like? Kelly being half Hexen Beast, half Grimm. So it's like, what is that going to mean for him? I mean, Diana is very powerful the way she is. Granted, she is the child of two, what Renard is, was it a Zalber Beast? And, well, because him being what he is, that's like actually like he's half Hexen Beast himself too, because that's actually how you get a Zalber Beast in the first place. It's like a Hexen Beast and something else mixed together to get a Zalber Beast. So it's like, will Kelly be something like that, like the strength of one? Because like he's half Grimm, half like what would that do for him? Because that's not really come up and might not be something that's ever covered in a series. Because we see how powerful Diana is, being born of a Zalber Beast and a Hexen Beast. So I mean, who's to say what Kelly could be? And then there was the whole showdown between Nick and Renard. Both Renards going at it. Like, to me, my brain instantly like, oh my God, this is going to end one way. I was like, I know how the episode is end. They're going to both fight. One of them's going to fall off the roof. And like, because they both look like Renard, we won't know until the next episode who died. I was like, obviously it's going to be the real Renard that's dead. And it's like Nick stuck as Renard and he has to live out the rest of his, like the rest of more, he has to live out the rest of some more episodes, essentially. Not the rest of his life, but some episodes stuck as Renard, balancing that. But that turns out not to be the case, because it's like they walk away from the situation. Something I had to quickly throw it in there because it popped in my mind. I forgot the fact is no one's ever actually seen the transformation, because Rosalie and Monroe were like, oh my God, is this happening? And then like it had to be Eve to be like, oh yeah, it's working. Like him being in pain and his skin crawling and stuff, like looking the way it does, it's like that tells you it's working. Only 3 people have ever seen what that looks like: Eve/Juliet, Adeline, and now Nick. So it's just like, still, even then, like it was just kind of, it's cool when it's like, oh yeah, there's something. It's like, oh right, this is the character's first time actually experiencing this themselves. That's such a little thing they don't have to include, but it makes sense, for continuity purposes. Because it's like, of course they'd react like that because it's their first time seeing something like that. They've heard about it, but it's like hearing about it and seeing it, it's one thing. Especially because it's like Nick's there in front of you one moment and then he turns around and he looks like Renard the next. So, but essentially Nick and Renard have buried a hatchet. Was not expecting that. Did not see that coming. And it's like, okay, let's make the new arrangement. Okay, so what's going to happen? It's like, I got to be mayor. It's like, I can't let you be mayor. It's like, well, what I can do is we can do it like this. Basically, how do we handle the whole precinct massacre situation? Let's say Bonaparte did it, because both of them are kind of on their own. He doesn't have HW in Portland anymore, but neither does Sean have Black Claw backing him in Portland, because Bonaparte is dead. And it's like, okay, so what we do is we say that Bonaparte went on that whole massacre thing because basically there were some dirty cops that were working for him and things went out of control. So blame everything on him, because it's like he kind of, because we still haven't seen what happens, because, Black Claw is more like kind of, still thinking that Nick's the one that kind of killed Bonaparte. So obviously must be some words. And Sean must have to keep up his end of the deal and probably keep it tied up, being like, okay, no, I was wrong. It wasn't Nick who killed him, yada, yada. I don't know. Or maybe he'll go along with it and be like, Nick did it because he didn't have any choice, because Bonaparte was no longer on our side. It was kind of doing his own thing type of. We'll have to see on that. But just wasn't expecting things to kind of go down that easy. And also there's a situation like, okay, my son, I'll raise my own son. And then, Sean was like, okay, well, then I'll raise Diana. He's like, and I want Adeline back with me. He's like, fine, take her. Like, because the thing is, he doesn't care about Diana, Adeline, because, at the beginning he was telling Adeline, it's like, you need to get with the program, essentially being like, she's like, you have to tell me we got to find a way to make this work. He's like, no, it's not up to me to make this work. It's up to you. It's like, she has to play the part of the good wife. And it's like, that's all you have to do. Haha. Yeah. I said haha because there's a TV show called Good Wife. Yeah. I know it's. I should have just kept on going and it went past that, but yeah. Anyway, that's kind of the whole thing. So he was, I don't know, it just sucks to kind of hear him kind of treat her that way, just like that she is nothing. I mean, granted, like from the very beginning, it was just kind of a marriage of convenience of being like, oh, we need the image of the perfect family because Diana is your daughter, and it's like, oh, she needs her mom there. So it's like, it was all for an image purpose anyway. So it's not like he really loves Adeline, but it just seems like almost like he doesn't even care about her well-being at all. So I don't know, it's a little sad. And then kind of coinciding with what I brought up earlier, how I thought the episode was going to like play out with, oh, like Nick being the one Sean that lived and the real Sean died. Well, at first I was like, oh man, that'd be kind of interesting. Because, you know, when Diana woke up, I was like, oh yeah. I was like, the moment I saw that, I was like, oh, she's going to see through it, isn't it? And she did. But I was thinking, like, what would happen if she ended up, you know, what if the real Sean had died and Nick was the one that's still alive looking like Sean? What would Diana have done then? But she ended up attacking him. It was like, because you're not my daddy, because she used her powers. Because at first she was full, but then her powers activated. She saw through it and ended up hitting him and ended up forcing him to return. So I was like, kind of trailing back to the point that Diana's a lot stronger than anyone gives her credit for. It's like, whatever her whole thing is, she's like super powerful. She was able to do something no one else know how to do. Like, they were looking through every book and no one could find a way to revert him back to being normal. Because every other way they found of a similar circumstance of any Grimm in the past basically ended it with them dying. So, and the final note I want to talk about in the episode being how, well, I'll push that aside real quickly. Kind of quickly bring up the fact is I do wonder how things are going to be different now, because it's like, oh, Kelly and Adeline are living together with Nick, but Diana's going to be kind of moving back and forth between Sean and Adeline. They kind of have to work together to raise her and stuff like that. So what that means for Diana, because she wants her family to be together and she sees Adeline and Nick, because the way she was looking at Nick at the end of the episode, like, kind of had me concerned, because it does beg up the question, like, what if she finds out that Nick and Adeline just are a thing and there's no more her and her dad and Adeline? So maybe Nick becomes an obstacle that she tries to get rid of. Who knows? But finally, going back to the point I was just about to make, was the fact is, at the end of the episode, he goes back to his apartment, and lo and behold, who's there? Meisner. Once again, not what I was expecting. Once again, it's like, for one, is Meisner in his head or is Meisner real? Because he was like, I told you, Sean, you picked the wrong side. Because the entire time, Sean's been seeing Meisner everywhere. Because a big part of this episode was like, he got this lieutenant, cop. I forgot his name. He's basically the guy he had him kill that dude Jeremiah, because dude was like, oh, I was in love with Rachel. I know you killed her. The fact is, if you want me to keep quiet about all this and stuff like that, then pay me. And it's like, oh, I know you're guilty because of the fact that you're willing to pay. But he ended up getting his throat clawed open by the dude. And then while he was dying, Sean kind of got a flash of Meisner. So I was like, he keeps reliving that. So I was like, maybe that's going to turn into something. So that kind of begs the question, like, is this really Meisner or is that someone inside his head? I think Meisner's dead, but who knows? Because it might be playing the whole part of like, oh yeah, like, because I mean, like I said, the whole Sean thing took me by surprise. It's like, so he's technically a good guy now, because it's like, oh well, he's back to being captain and everything. So like Nick, Wu, and Hank have to go back and work with him. Like, nothing's wrong. It's like the relationship's not going to be the same, obviously, and everything will never be the same as it was after all he's done. But they'll try to find a way to make it work. So, because I wasn't expecting it to be Meisner, because he had said something after his whole little showdown with Nick. He was like, if something happens to me, Diana's gonna be super pissed. The moment he went back home, I was like, oh god, that cop dude who basically thought the whole conversation he was having with Sean was actually between him and Nick. That whole situation is like, oh, because he was supposed to become the new captain while Renard went off and became mayor, but it didn't obviously happen because Nick backed down from all of that. So it kind of compromised the new position that he was promised after all he did, killing the dude, disposing of his body. So I was thinking, okay, so either he's going to pop up in Renard's place and try and kill him, which is something that still could happen later on, because he still thinks it was Renard who came after him like that. Or maybe that's just because they said like, oh, I will remember this, and Nick's like, I'll remember this too. So it could be Nick remembering to go after him or keep an eye out for that guy, because he knows he's a bad guy. But I was thinking like, oh, he's waiting in Renard's apartment to kill him, or which would end badly, or the fact is he dumped the dude's body there or something, trying to make a point. I didn't really know. Turns out neither happened. It was the whole Meisner thing. So very interested to see how that plays out. I'm really aiming for the fact is that like, oh, it's all inside his head, but maybe Meisner just might be alive. Highly doubt it, but maybe he is. We'll just have to wait till next time to kind of see if that's the case or not. Because if it was the case, I feel like not unless he's hiding, maybe he somehow survived and he let everyone think he was dead this entire time. It's like, you would think he would let HW, even Trouble, know. But I guess, the element of surprise is necessary. I guess, I don't know. I get the feeling like he's definitely got to be inside of Sean's head. So, and now moving on to this week's episode of Sleepy Hollow. In this episode, we had the Headless Horseman coming to DC and specifically going after the president, which was kind of interesting. It's like, but it seems like there's a reasoning behind that because basically, depending on what religions you go by, that basically heads are basically, you take the head of a leader or something, and essentially there's a lot of magic behind it. So that's why he wants the president's head, because basically her being the president means that she has a lot of magic in her head. And another thing came out this episode. I kept watching it the entire episode. I'm like, has that ever come up before? I highly doubt it. It's the whole head thing in this about him putting on someone else's head and then using it as his own. It basically disguises his body. Like he kept putting it on those cops' heads, so that once he put it on, like he ended up on, like he appeared to be that person. His body didn't look like its original form until his head got knocked off, and then he got back into his original form. So that seems like that's a new development, which is going to be interesting going forward, because that means you never know really 100% who's the Headless Horseman, because he could be anyone. All he has to do is chop someone's head off and put it on his own body. Is that something? It makes you wonder, is that something he could always do? He just never took it upon himself to do it, or is it a new trick he learned in his new, battle? I mean, maybe new season they wanted to kind of give him a new trick up his sleeve. So it's like, we can't really have the Headless Horseman running through town. I mean, even with that happening in Sleepy Hollow, it never became a really big thing. I mean, most people that came across him ended up dying, so no one really believed it. So, because it does make you wonder, like, how does a lot of that supernatural stuff stay hush hush? I literally brought that up last episode, didn't I? I think I did. Yeah, I think I really went into a whole tangent about that last episode, but it's kind of interesting. Basically, that plays a small part in the episode. A really big part of the episode is like Crane ends up having to tell the truth about everything, about his whole situation, his connection to the Horsemen, as well as like what this has all been about, his battle, about Abby and him being witnesses, what that means, fighting the apocalypse. And the fact is that they're bringing that up again. Like, I still get the feeling like I said, we never really got to see the other two horsemen of the apocalypse. So I mean, maybe this would be an opportunity, whatever it is Dreyfus is up to, but I'll kind of get to that a little bit later on. But everyone, like Jake, is like super excited. He's like, dude, that's so cool, because he already thought, Crane was a time traveler. Alex kind of seemed like, that's interesting. She's not nearly as excited as Jake is. And I love how Jake called him out on it, because Jake was like, oh yeah, you're telling me all this information about a dude, in particular, a dude named Benjamin Banneker. He's like, oh yeah, that you're telling me all about this Benjamin Banneker dude, right? But it's like, there's no way you could do that, because all of his journals, everything like material that's related to him, like knowing the extent of information that you do, it's impossible to know that, because all his journals burned up like 150 years ago. So how do you know what you know? And then Alex points out the fact that it's like she had his hair tested, and it's like there's certain things in his hair that's like it would only come from someone who's not from this time period, and he tells them the truth and everything. Which Diana, reasonably enough, is super pissed. It's like, you lied to me. It's like, we're up here battling the supernatural, and you don't tell me that you yourself is a supernatural, that you're caught up in all of this. And Ichabod has his reasons for doing what he did. Basically being like, he wanted not to, be too much. I mean, like, it's a lot to handle. Like, I mean, yes, he should have told her sooner, because it's like, hey, at the same time too, like, because even Alex herself is like, now that she knows the truth, she was like, well, because it's like, well, it doesn't really matter where he's from. Like, her biggest problem was like, she thought he was hiding something else, but now that she knows what the truth is, it's kind of like, well, no, it doesn't really matter where he's from type of situation. So it doesn't, like, that is his information. That is his life. Maybe that's a part of his life that he doesn't want to share. But then once again, that's just me playing devil's advocate. And, Diana's situation is like, we're partners in this whole situation. It kind of got me mixed up on this world and supernatural. I mean, to be fair, she kind of fell in it to herself. So, I mean, granted, with her daughter being a witness and everything, it kind of makes sense that she was going to stumble across it eventually. But another thing was that, I mean, that was a big part of the conversation of like, especially when she found out about Molly, because she started asking Jenny about stuff about the whole supernatural thing and about Abby being a witness and stuff. It's like, how did you get dragged in? She's like, well, me and Abby saw the trees back when they were little girls. And then it like clicked in her, like Diana's head, because she saw the same trees drawn in Molly's book. And essentially, like, because I didn't even think about it. Like, obviously, I felt like all of it, like, it never clicked in my head. I was like, oh, she's just drawing that. I was like, oh, maybe that's something containing to the future. Not once did I look at those pictures and think what I'm literally about to call him Sherlock, what Crane had literally pointed out. And that all those pictures were from Abby's point of view. They were like, oh, this is the first time me and Abby met. This is, first time that she met the Headless Horseman. This is when she kind of first met the supernatural, when she came across those those trees. Her and Jenny came across those trees, and I'm like, that's so interesting. Because I was wondering, like, I was like, oh, she obviously drew it because I was like, I automatically knew there's like a little bit of Abby, some kind of essence of Abby's is there inside of her, because the fact that she drew Crane before she ever met him. But then to put that in that perspective, so some shape or form, there might be a little bit of Abby in there after all, or maybe it's just some kind of like, almost kind of like, because it's not really a reincarnation type of situation, which I kind of figured it wouldn't be, because it's like, there's no way that's going to, it had to be an incarnation type of thing, the whole witness kind of passing the torch thing. So I guess it's like some semblance of Abby being left there. Molly ended up talking about the fact that she didn't really draw them. It's like she had a dream. Like, that's how she saw all that. So the dream stopped the moment, she started talking again. So, but Diana's like, you know what? You've lied to me. Me and my daughter are not going to be mixed up in this. Crane is like, we're going to keep her safe and everything. But it's like, Diana's like, no, my daughter's not going to be a part of this. And he's like, you can't run from this. She's like, watch me. And it's like, you can't. Abby literally spent her entire life running from what she saw. The whole situation that led to her and Jenny being split up, that people thinking Jenny was crazy because Abby was scared to tell the truth of what she saw. And it's like, her life was touched by the supernatural at such a young age. She never escaped it because it found its way back to her, even after all those years. So try as much as Diana wants, she can't, because she is part of this world just as much as Molly is, because she's mixed up in all of this. Even though, because it's like, once you've taken that step forward, there is no going back. And even Crane tried to warn her from the beginning. It's like, once you go down this path, I mean, he legitimately warned her at the end of the episode, you go down this path, there is no going back. And that's before the whole finding out Molly was the witness and stuff like that. It's not like Crane wanted it to be a kid. If it was a different situation, he probably would, like, it'd be I'm curious to see if that it happens, because I kept bringing it up. What if it's something like Diana kind of holds onto the torch? Obviously, she's going to be there to kind of be the protector of Molly, but it's like, what if somehow they find a way to transfer it from Molly into Diana, like the whole being a witness thing, and she's like, oh, I take it upon myself. This way my daughter doesn't have to be caught up in all this. Like, sure, like, I'll be part of this, but I can't have her be part of it. So, but she won't be able to run away from this. And it's kind of sad that things kind of played out that way, because they're kind of at odds now, but no matter what she does, like, it's going to happen. They're going to come back together where she really won't want it, but she has no choice in the matter. Like, it's the destiny of a witness. And it's probably going to come down to a conversation with Jenny. She's like, I get why you're scared. I mean, because Jenny told Ichabod, it's like, you should have told, she said this. Essentially, he said himself, I know what you're going to say, rip off the proverbial Band-Aid. And it's like, he should have. He should have told her a lot sooner than later. But then again, for one, it's understandable, because it's like, that would have been throwing too much at you. It's like, yeah, the supernatural is real. I'm like over 200 years old. I'm from like the 1700s. Your daughter's like basically one of the two, a witness like me, and we're supposed to help in the great battle of good versus evil. That's a lot to take in. That's a lot for anyone to handle. Like, even being introduced to the supernatural, like the fact is, you're still easing into the supernatural. It's like, you gotta give yourself some time to breathe, because it's just, that's a lot to take in. So, like, the only one that's not affected by this is Jake. Jake is taking it in stride. Like, oh, supernatural, bam. Oh, the Headless Horseman, bam. Oh, you're a time traveler, bam. It's like, he loves it and enjoy it. Also love the fact is that he's kind of hitting on Jenny a little bit. And I love what Jenny's like, you keep giving me those eyes, and I'm going to poke one of your eyes out or something like that. And now it's just being like, man, she's so out of your league. I'm surprised this conversation didn't go. She's like, oh, like Jenny was like, oh yeah, me and Joe found basically something of Bonaker's, like some of his stuff that survived the fire. And like, I always kept forgetting Corbin Jr.'s name. It's Joe. Thanks for solidifying that back in my head. I'm surprised not once did Alex go, oh yeah, who's Joe? Jake didn't go like, oh, who's Joe? Just to kind of be like, oh, like, spark the conversation, but it hasn't come up yet. Because the fact is that now everyone knows about Crane's past. They don't really know about Jenny's. I mean, granted, obviously, like last episode, Diana kind of found out about the whole like Jenny being kind of a criminal thing. So, what else went down this episode? Basically, there was a whole conversation they had with Dreyfus, because Dreyfus is the one who had Benjamin Bonaker's the thing that they needed. I said, and then I know, like, once again, I have to do this every once in a while, especially when an actor I recognize. The actor who played Benjamin Bonaker is Edwin. Hodge. He is out as Hodge, the actor who played, he's out as Hodge's older brother. Out as Hodge is the actor who played, I mean, he's been on quite a few things, but for me, the first thing that comes to my mind always is, Hardison from Leverage. He's currently on, that WGN show Underground, but just, I was like, oh yeah, but nevertheless, a very interesting character that, like, you know, when Ichabod met, I was like, he's a very smart, intelligent man. He's actually the one, who set up all the runes that basically made it hard for the horsemen to kind of move around at first. The reason why that cop at the beginning was safe because he couldn't cross it because of the runes that were set up. That, and he's also the one who basically laid the foundation for what is DC. Like, he mapped it out originally, and then basically someone else, I forgot who it was they said, but some other person basically took his design and basically created what is now DC, and basically is almost exactly the same. So, but because Barnaker brought up some very interesting things, like, you know, it's like, oh, Washington wanted him to be part of the fight, and Ichabod's there to kind of recruit him and everything, and he's like, well, why should I be a part of the fight? It's like, these guys, the founding fathers, are trying to fight as a means of escaping their masters, yet here they are enslaving other people. So it's like, you know, it's very hypocritical of them. And he's like, you know, if you tell me which I must choose a side that's of, you know, the lesser of the two evils, then it's like, then I choose not to vote or participate at all. But Ichabod was able to kind of convince him, because it's like, yeah, because the fact is that it's like, yes, like, fighting for the future and equality starts on the paper, but it's like, if you really want things to change, you have to stand up and fight for that change. So, like, in his case, it's like, if you want this, you're going to have to fight for it too. So, because, you know, Ichabod himself being like, I'm very against slavery myself. And even he understands, like, you know, history is not a pretty thing, like, but it's something that doesn't come up often in Sleepy Hollow. It's come up a few times, especially like in the beginning when he first met Abby. It came up a little bit, but then it's like, it's something that, you know, Ichabod, it's not like he was like completely ignored it. He was well aware of it, and it was something that he was very against. So, I don't know, that whole thing was just something kind of interesting. I always, like, I think I've said it before and I'll say it again, I always like that aspect of just kind of getting that kind of quote unquote real history when you kind of learn these people that Ichabod himself met. So, but kind of getting back to it, Dreyfus, he had this whole conversation with Crane and Diana, basically being like, he kind of believes in supernatural and stuff like that, it's like, oh, DC, there's obviously some supernatural stuff here and stuff like that. He even makes a joke being like, yeah, I know all this stuff about supernatural because I sold my soul to the devil at the age of 25, you know, and he laughs it off and stuff like that. Even walking away from the situation, Crane and Diana were very suspicious of him. It's like, they don't know what his reasoning is, but it seemed like he gave them a helping hand with kind of the whole, situation with the Headless Horseman, which to me, I'm thinking like, maybe that's what this whole deal is about. Maybe he legitimately did sell his soul. It's like, who is the guy that's beside him? I think his name is Jones, the demon dude. Still don't really know what he is or who he is exactly. Like I said, I keep bringing it up. It's like, maybe he's actually the main antagonist from season 1 and first half of season 2. The demon that they were fighting, the one that was trying to create the apocalypse, that dude, it's been such a long time, I forgot his name. I know it begins with an M. That's all I can really remember at this point, but him is like, what if that's actually Jones, or maybe there's something, or maybe this is all about bringing him back. Like, it's like, I'm trying to understand what Dreyfus is really after. He ends up making that deal with the Headless Horseman, being like, I can get you the president's head. That's actually kind of easy, but it's like, hey, let's work together. It's like, for what? Like, obviously, because the whole capturing the horseman, it was going, he basically helped Ichabod and them because he knew it would help him in the long run, because basically it put him in an advantageous position to be like, oh, have a bargaining chip, because, you know, he's trapped in J Street. But it's like, they weren't aware of where, well, I guess they knew exactly where J Street was. They were just kind of waiting for Ichabod and them to kind of find it, because they found their way there and destroyed, you know, the way to J Street that kept, you know, him sealed away. And it makes, obviously it seems we probably will be dealing more with J Street because of the whole thing about Ichabod got that gunk on the bottom of his shoe, and it seems like it attacks him at the end of the episode. He kind of went to purgatory back in like one of the first half, at the end of the first half of season. Well, not him. Abby went to purgatory in like the first, like, you know, at the end of the first half, kind of the second half of season 2, so maybe that's connected to it. Because like once they cross into J Street, they're like, oh yeah, this is weird. It looks like it's kind of like a pocket dimension, and it kind of has that vibe of almost like purgatory. That is something that hasn't really come back up before again, purgatory. So I'm curious, is that something related to that? Once again, a little peek at the preview. It looked like he got put off somewhere else. I don't know where exactly, but because trying not to watch too much in the next preview. But I'm very interested to see how that all plays out. Hopefully find out. I really want to know what the hell Dreyfus is up to, and maybe the demon that he's with is the one he sold his soul to, and what he gets out of this, what he wants. Maybe Dreyfus is only acting on his behalf. Maybe that guy is he acts on his behalf because it's like, okay, I own your soul, so now I'm gonna be your servant. Or maybe he just owns that demon or whatever. I mean, the guy seems to do his bidding without question. So not unless he has something on him to keep him, tame and under control. Like I said, not unless it's part of the bargain with his soul. Or maybe he could have been 100% joking about that. It's hard to say with Dreyfus, like, what's real. Like, there was that interesting conversation near the beginning where he's like, a guy that's like, oh, yeah, basically invest in my company, essentially. He's like, oh, you're only focused on, like, the next 10 years. How about the next 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years? Maybe going for that age-old immortality, that basically he wants immortality and power. Maybe that's what he wants in the long run. Because he's like, and he said like, oh, what's going to help humanity in the long run? So it's like bringing greatness and magic to the human world or something. I don't know. Like his motives are still unclear, but hopefully get a clear picture of that. Plus things between Ichabod and Diana get fixed. Like I said, I feel like Jenny's going to be the one that has to talk to her because she's the one that knows better than anyone what it's like. Well, Ichabod knows what being a witness has done because it basically turned his life upside down. It literally took him away from the place that was his home and took him to a place that he just didn't fit in. So he knows better than anyone. But also Jenny knows because it's like she knows both sides because she knows Ichabod's story. Plus she knows what it was like, because she lost her sister. So she understands more so than anybody what the toll being a witness can cost someone. So Destiny's messed up like that. No matter how far you run, they'll always find a way to track you down. So. But overall, a very good episode. Like I said, cannot wait to see where the next episode takes us. And now moving on to this week's episode of Emerald City. So there's that whole situation in that town that the wizard himself visited in this episode. I'm still not 100% clear on that situation. Essentially, obviously the Crown's Guard do what they're supposed to do. Like anytime there's any type of magic or type of situation to come in, they do some very bad things, and basically a lot of people in the town got killed. There's one particular guy, he's not the only one, but there's one guy in particular who's kind of that like leader of the whole situation of being like, obviously the wizard is there to kind of inspect things himself, and one of the guy calls him out, it's like, oh, I lost my mom, I lost my wife, all I have left is my daughter who's pregnant with my grandchild, and it's like, this is kind of all your fault. You came here searching for magic, and even though there isn't any here, even though there was magic kind of like, it's like a magic circle or something. It was basically leading into a tunnel, and Anna touched it and ended up getting hurt. Which, side note, I did like the whole fact is that had to be super awkward, like him releasing Anna, and she's like, oh, so are you walking me towards my death? He's like, no, I'm putting you to work. It's got, there was that super weird awkwardness where it's just kind of like, yeah, I kind of had you locked up and everything. So it's like, she's like, oh, so what made you decide to bring me along? I thought you were mad at me for standing up to you. And he's like, no, you got my attention because you stood up to me, and that's the reason why you're here. But I'll get to that in a second. But nevertheless, Anna ended up getting hurt, and so he's kind of like, oh, I can't imagine if anything happened to you. She's like, I'm sorry, telling the wizard, I'm sorry, it can't be like that because my focus is my mission here to be part of the High Council and be like your advisor, and it's like I can't let anything jeopardize that mission. So, and then you go to like her being like, you got to fix this situation, talking to that specific leader guy. He's like, do you want me to kill him? It's like, no, because if you kill him, you just make him a martyr, but basically change him, kind of get him on your side. And then it's like, kind of brings up the conversation of like, oh, in this world, like, of science and magic. And he's like, yeah, one of them's a lie. And he's like, oh, which one is that? He's like, magic is in the heart of Oz. always has been, and it's like science is just kind of like something that can't really do anything. It sure as hell can't stop. Yeah, magic couldn't really stop the beast, but it's not supposed to. The beast forever is supposed to do its thing forever. It's just kind of like it's part of the world. It's kind of the way things work in Oz. It's like it's supposed to happen. It's supposed to do its thing, and then it moves on. You can't permanently stop it. It's like trying to stop the wind from blowing. I guess it's kind of a comparison I guess I could make. But then you had the wizard being like, okay, like, can science really, protect? The guy was like, can science protect my granddaughter? He's like, well, let's see if that's the case. And it seems like the guy changes his tone. And the reason for that is because they were holding his daughter who's pregnant with his granddaughter hostage. And it's basically like, hey, you don't say that you're on our side. It basically like, hey, you leave this magic stuff behind if it, and kind of side with the wizard and just being more for science than magic. Which the townspeople are just kind of like, not really reacting much to it. Like, why are you changing your tune all of a sudden? But it's like, I'm guessing it's his part to sway them. So we're kind of seeing that side of the wizard being like, once again, hard to say if he's actually the good guy because we see that he has a cruel side to him, but it seems like he does care, especially when it comes to Anna. But it's like when it comes to all these other people, he's having his guardsmen go out here and burn people because of the whole, like, it's kind of like snuffing stuff out before it happens. It's like, oh yeah, any hint of magic, snuff it out and snuff out all connected to it. That way you don't make sure magic goes wild. Because for whatever reason, I guess because magic is something he can't control. It's such a wildfire type of thing. So it's like, keep it completely shut down. That way he doesn't have to worry about someone overpowering him, I guess. I don't know. Maybe he feels like magic is like a few, because if people have magic, then people will have more faith in magic than they do in him, because people think of him as the guy who saved them, stopped the beast, so that's why he's got such a recognition as being the great Wizard of Oz. So, to keep his power and to keep his position, it seems like heavily with the wizard, it does seem like it's more of a pride thing. So, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, it seems like there is like a situation where it's like you can see him being kind to certain people. He does have kindness. He doesn't go straight at, I mean, I'm sure the easiest thing would have been just to kill the dude, but in fact, it would have made him a martyr. But it's like, you could argue probably doing what he did might have been considered, will probably definitely be considered crueler, because it's like he's threatening the life of an unborn child. So it's like, it's hard to really say in a situation like who, at the end of it all, like who's going to be the bad guy. And this is the same guy that Dorothy's like, hey, I need to go to him to get home. It's like, will he really even help you get home? But the thing is that came up about the beast forever. It's like, this time she brought it up. She's like, Anna's like, it will come in this new form. It will have a brain. It will have fallen from the sky. It will have a heart. And it will have like, essentially, I forgot the exact wording she used, but basically it has like a lot of strength, essentially. It would be possessed by great strength or something like that. So I guess kind of representing kind of like from, like I said, based on my original knowledge of the Wizard of Oz, the movie from so long ago, obviously you kind of have Tin Man with the brain. I mean, Tin Man with the heart, Scarecrow with the brain, the Lion with the strength, and the sky part being Dorothy. But it seems more like, rather than them all being four separate people, that it is all in one. That basically, I guess, because Dorothy is as powerful as she is, like, we haven't really seen her tap into the power, but she has the gauntlets and everything, and maybe with all four, like the other three that are possibly going to join her on this journey, she ends up they represent, I don't know, because I feel like she's supposed to represent the beast. She's supposed to be like, oh, the beast forever is in the form of Dorothy, or maybe there's something else entirely. We just have, I don't know. That's a lot what's going to come up when it comes to things. I just like, I start thinking about something and I'm like, I don't really know where exactly I'm going with thought. And so it's always like, I don't know. That's how I always end things like that. We found out about Jack's situation, because Tip was trying to kill herself because she felt so bad about what she did to Jack. She was asking this soldier dude, like, hey, I'll kill for you. Just take me along with you. He ends up selling her to an orphanage that's connected to good old Glenda. So basically, Glenda uses this orphanage as a means to train ladies, kind of basically people to be high counsel to the Wizard of Oz. Basically, the position that Anna's in right now, like trained to be her as well as the others. Tip is not okay with that. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, who shows up? West. wanting to do almost the exact same thing as Glinda. Glinda's like, oh, we can bring you in, teach you the ropes. And Wes kind of wants to do the same thing, except basically get Tip to work at the brothel. And I love Tip being like, so you're saying as a girl, I have two choices, nun or whore. And then she's like, I forgot what it was. Like, Wes had some smart remark that she kind of added on too. I even love the fact is that Wes tried to manipulate her into, like, while Tip was in a bath, then she always looks up and there's another girl in the bath with her. And then when she goes back under and, the camera shows you that it was Wes kind of disguising herself, which Tip wasn't stupid. She knew it was her the entire time. Because essentially, Tip wants to forget the past initially. She just wants some way to forget. Thinking maybe Glinda might be the way, or, Wes could be the way, but it's kind of like Wes' way of going things when we working in a brothel. It's like, oh, you can make other people happy and now kind of make you kind of feel something like you might have never felt before. And it's just kind of like, The thing is, why? Because even Glinda's like, why now? You wait till now to decide, like, all of a sudden, oh, you want to take an interest in all this, like, this old orphanage situation. So it's like, why? The question is, why take such a special interest in Tip? Not unless she knows more about her situation and circumstances, but it's like, why specifically now? And why take such a special interest in Tip? Obviously, I guess because she feels like personality-wise, her and Tip kind of click. At the end of it, Glinda ends up taking all the other girls, which I'm thinking not just Tip. It seems like Wes kind of wanted to take everyone, all the other girls, but it seems like they all kind of went with Glinda, and also probably got like an earful from her sister, because it's like Glinda talks down to her. It's like, oh, you're such a freaking disgrace. You put in shame to us all doing the things that you do, kind of the work that you do. I think it's just kind of like, that you basically stay high all the time. It's like you just fell as a witch, essentially. So, but Tip is like, what? I no longer want to forget. I want to remember everything that I've done and everything that's happened. But what do I really want is your power. So Wes seems like she's very interested in an idea, and it's like, what does Tip plan on doing with learning magic? I guess she, because Tip's on her own. She has no one else now that Jack's gone. At least, to her knowledge, Jack is gone. So I'm assuming it's going to be a situation she needs to kind of fill that void. So it's like, hey, with magic, she never has to worry about losing anything or having anything ever taken from her again. She can take what she wants and have what she wants if she has magic on her side. So I'll wait to see how that plays out for her. I can only assume it won't end well. It's kind of like some might even argue you probably picked the worst person to kind of be teaching you how to do magic. Another side of things is there's a girl named Sophie who's in the woods, who you have Dorothy being like, hey, let's help her. Do you have Lucas being like, let's not. You want to get back home, don't you? You're like, oh, you want to get back home so badly, so let's go. Like, we can't be caught up in all this, because the fact is the Crown's Guard, obviously they're going to be after you soon. It's like, you said you want to go home, so let's go get you to the wizard so you can go home. But she's like, I'm not going to leave this girl behind. Walks around the town, asks around. People are like, oh, we don't know. Two people come up and like, oh yeah, Sophie. And they take her. But then, Dorothy didn't. She was looking at it, it's like, no, this ain't right. She's like, there's no way these people are your family. Especially because they're like, oh yeah, this is her house or whatever. And they're like, she's like, okay, then where's her room? Like, what? Where's her room? Crown's Guard shows up. So Lucas obviously pulled away. He does bring up an interesting conversation piece that basically saying like that is like, oh, they will kill you if they see you. It's like, what is wrong with you, Dorothy? He's like, it seems like ever since, for a while now, all you've done is charge forward without thinking. It's like you want to die. It's like you don't care if you die. It's like, but Pete, there are people who care if you die. I care if you die. Let her die. Now, to me, I'm thinking it's a combination of the fact is that she probably feels like there's no way home for her, because her one chance was the whole East Castle situation to use the tornado to go home. But I think there's a part of her that's like, maybe there's no going home. I don't know, because for one, I think naturally Dorothy already cared, it being in the doctor profession, maybe she cared, well, the medical profession is kind of, I really should label that. I think she naturally cares a little bit more about other people's well-being than her own. She only, because it's also like Lucas is almost kind of points it out, it's like, oh, you're imprinting on the girl. It's like a girl all on her own, and you're just trying to help her out, get back to her family. It's like, aren't you imprinting a little bit on her? And it's like, yeah, she is. Well, kind of deflecting her own situation onto the little girl, because they have very similar circumstances. But I'm guessing because it's like, she knows the only person that can help her get home is Wizard, but the Wizard also wants her dead. So I think for her, she feels like she's damned if she does, damned if she don't. So it's kind of like who cares at the end of it? Like, if I can do some good, then I do some good. If I end up dying, I end up dying. I think it's just kind of a situation of like feeling like she really has no options. So, but we also see that we ended up seeing that Sophie has there's two things. One, she has these special earplugs that basically mute the world for her, because Dorothy pulled one of them out, and then at the moment, like, sound started hitting her, she covered up her ears and everything. Dorothy's like, I'm sorry, and put it back in. Maybe that's connected to her whole power thing, because she was holding onto those two people's hands and she was shaking. Her eyes kind of widened, and, well, specifically, like, her irises, the iris of her eye kind of widened, and then she was like shaking and she turned them to stone. I wasn't expecting Dorothy to do what she did. I was thinking like, okay, I was like, oh, the girl's stuck between both of them. I was like, oh, I guess she's just gonna have to smash off their hands. Didn't bother smashing their hands, literally just smashed into pieces. I was like, I thought you were gonna break off his hand or something. I was like, they're stuck in stone, but I guess no way around it. But it's like, no, smashing them to dust. I mean, at the end of the day, I guess it's like, well, they were douchebags trying to take advantage of her. So maybe they had some kind of connection to Sophie because they did know that she liked sweets, but maybe that was just that dude being like, hey, she's a kid, so obviously she's going to want some sweets or something. I don't know. And then the head of the Crown's Guard walks up to Dorothy. He's like, oh, I got to kill you. And then he sees the sword and he's like, where's the owner of that sword? And he's like, I've been searching for him for a very long time. And he draws the sword on. Well, he ends up smacking her a little bit. Dorothy pulls out the gun and fires. Lucas comes and then tells to get them both out there, and the dude's like, hey, calls him by his name. What is it, like Ronan or Rowan? Ends up calling his name multiple times, and then Dorothy's like, don't step forward, don't, ends up shooting him. But I mean, it doesn't work because obviously she hit him in a vital spot. He's bleeding, but he's not dead. He ends up getting up, and he ends up, chasing after them later on. I did like that sweet moment between Dorothy and Lucas of just like listening to music. It's like, because she's like, bringing up the fact is that they have magic in his world, because the question came up of whether Sophie's a witch or not, which it's still hard to say whether she is or not. But it's kind of like, oh, we have magic in our world, it's called science, and basically pulled out her phone and played music for him. I love that song. I don't know why. It's just like anytime I hear that song, I just always have to sing it. I don't know, like, I've always loved that song since I was a little kid. Obviously, I won't sing it for copyright reasons. I know I could cover it for being like, oh, it could be me covering it, but at the same time, it's like, plus you don't want to hear my terrible singing voice anyway, so why waste your time with that? So, anyway, they ended up getting captured. Crown's Guard dude blocks Lucas's path, and also the dude that she met at the beginning, that Dorothy met her first moment of coming to, the kind of chief leader, he ends up knocking her out. It's like, why is he there? Shouldn't he be back leading his people, leading his tribe? But I guess he came along, or is he trying to help Dorothy because he actually cares about her because of all she's done? Like, well, I mean, also finding out the fact is that she killed the Witch of the East probably pissed him off, because she's the only one that could open the abject, like the little prison that everyone's kind of sealed in. Like, she's the only one that can unlock that. So it's like, capture her so that he can get her to unlock it. Because it's like, oh, if you're powerful enough to kill the Witch of the East, obviously you must be powerful enough to get this unlocked. So, and then we also had the situation with Jack, basically him being turned into what we can assume is the Tin Man. His heart's been replaced with a heart that will never break. But then he tells the woman who fixed him, Jane, is like, that's not true. It's kind of messed up that she did that to him. It's like, it's not like she even asked, but she just found his broken body and just decided to kind of make him an experiment. But then again, she was kind of like, hey, we're all kind of experiments. But then there was that weird moment in the episode when he ended up crossing paths with that lady. She wouldn't even help him up because he had fallen down. The lady, it seemed like she exchanges her face. At least she keeps it always hidden. Her name, you end up finding out later, it's like her name's Diaries. I can't remember her name. It's a weird name. She's like, apparently she's a princess. Princess Ave, I think it's what it was. I can't remember. But essentially she was like, oh, she's like, oh, he's like, could you pass me the wheelchair? And she's like, oh, I could. but I'm not going to. He's like, oh, what should I be today? He's like, a jackass? She's like, I was at like Monday or Tuesday or something like that. And then she's like, oh. And he finally got up in the chair and she's like, oh, good job for you, freak. And basically, it takes one freak to know a freak. You know, that's what she was saying. So, but in that moment, because what I was thinking at the end was Jane was like, okay, we got to get out of here. I was like, okay, so either Jane's about to take you out, you know, back and take you out like Old Yeller. I was kind of assuming that. It was like, or she's going to try and run with you. But then I was like, it's got to be connected to that lady because it's like she's putting so much emphasis on the fact that it's like, oh, she was in here. She saw you. Was she cruel to you? I was like, no, she wasn't necessarily cruel. And he was like, she was kind of like, okay. And so they left. And then they're climbing up the stairs. And I love Jack's line like, we're not going all the way to the top, are you? She's like, one step at a time. It's like, it's understandable why you'd be afraid of heights. But it turns out that apparently the princess has taken an interest in her meeting him. She started liking him. And so now she owns him now. I was thinking like the reason why she would own him is because she's like, oh, well, she said it's because of us that you're alive and you're right here in front of us. So you should be grateful and give us some gratitude. So I'm assuming either her people must have found him and brought Jack to Jane, or basically that they fund Jane's research. So everything she put into him is technically, it belongs to the Av family because their money paid for what basically went into his surgery. I can only assume what that means, why she's taking interest in him. Still an ever-developing situation all across the board for everyone's story. Still not 100% clear on everything, but it is interesting to see where everything plays out. I knew it. I kept wondering, and it kept flowing in the back of my mind. I kept feeling like I was forgetting something. Something I wanted to bring up is like, you know, obviously we never got an answer to it, but it's like, why did the little girl Sophie take such an interest in Lucas? Like when she first came up, she grabbed onto Lucas. When it came time to like, you know, being separated because he was going to stay back while Dorothy helped her find her parents, she kept looking back at Lucas, and Dorothy kept being like, oh, we'll come back to him. And it's like, she really responds to Lucas, but I'm wondering why. Is it because she probably doesn't talk, but maybe there's a part, well, she nods, but maybe she actually knew Lucas from the past too, and he helped her out. I don't know. It does make you wonder, like, was Lucas how did Lucas get in the situation he was in? Was he betrayed by someone? Was Lucas like the other Crown's Guard where he did what he was told? Maybe there was something that happened that changed Lucas's mind and made him decide to not be like that anymore. He got punished for it or whatever his whole situation was. Not unless that was something the Witch of the East did, but she never brought it up, so you would think, you know. So it makes you wonder who did that to him and why, but maybe that all has to deal with why he doesn't have his memories anymore or can't hold a thought in his head is kind of the wording they use. So very good episode, just a lot of interesting stuff and a lot more questions needing answering, you know, so. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.